Okay, imagine this for a second. There's this visionary billionaire, right? And he comes to you, says your child, your 10-year-old, has been picked, chosen to join the very first permanent human settlement on Mars. Now, the whole premise is, well, it's pretty shocking. They want kids because their bodies apparently adapt better to low gravity during puberty. So much so, they might not even be able to come back to Earth. And here's the real kicker. Your kid, without you knowing, signed themselves up, the company. They didn't need your actual permission, just a checkbox saying they got it.
Yeah, and you can just feel that immediate fear, can't you, as a parent? I mean, we're talking zero research on how kids handle space radiation, and kids are way more vulnerable. Their cells are dividing rapidly. And then there's the low gravity, the effects on growing bones, hearts, eyes, even brain development, likely deforming effects. What's really staggering is that the planners, the ones behind this whole Mars thing, they just didn't seem to consider these huge risks for children. It's like a massive blind spot.
So you've got to ask, right, would any parent actually allow this? It just sounds completely insane, setting your child off maybe forever to another planet. But, and this is the core of what we've been digging into, the source material argues something disturbingly similar is happening right now, here, on Earth. So our mission in this deep dive is to unpack that. How does this whole growing up on Mars idea reveal this, like historic, unprecedented change in childhood over just the last few decades? We're going to look at the impact on mental health, which is huge, and maybe most importantly, what we can actually do about it. I mean, definitely remember the early 2000s,
Yeah.
that feeling of techno-optimism, all these new internet things popping up. It felt like they were making life easier, connecting everyone.
Oh, absolutely. It felt like a real boon. And then pretty quickly, that tech started changing things for kids too. Parents, many of us found that giving a kid a phone or a tablet, well, it kept them happily engaged, quiet for hours sometimes. It was just so easy, so convenient. And because it felt like everyone was doing it, the assumption was just, well, it must be okay.
Like the Mars thing again, right? A new environment seemed great, but nobody really knew the long-term effects.
Exactly. Especially on kids.
But here's where it gets, well, really concerning, based on the research. The tech companies, they did basically little to no serious mental health research on how their products affected kids and teenagers. And worse, when the evidence of harm started piling up, often the reaction was denial or, obfuscation, PR campaigns to kind of muddy the waters.
It's really quite something, almost like those Mars planners just ignoring the science about radiation. And some companies, their whole goal was maximizing engagement. They use psychological tricks, hooking kids right when their brains are most vulnerable. What we see is social media seemed to hit girls hardest. For boys, it was more video games, pornography sites impacting them most. It wasn't just a small change. The source calls it a fire hose of addictive content. It pushed aside physical play, real face-to-face socializing, literally rewiring childhood on a scale that's almost unimaginable. And that really accelerated between, say, 2010 and 2015.
Okay, so if childhood was being rewired like that, what about protections? Were there any legal safeguards? In the U.S., the main thing is COPPA, right? Children's Online Privacy Protection Act. But that's from way back in 1998. It says you need parental consent for kids under 13 to sign up for stuff. But here's the thing. It set internet adulthood at 13 for reasons that had nothing to do with safety. And crucially, it doesn't actually require age verification. A kid can just tick a box. Say they're older or they have permission.
Right. And the result of that loophole is pretty stark. You've got 0% of American kids under 13 with Instagram accounts. And despite that, like you said, COPPA hasn't been updated federally since 1998. Nothing's changed at that level. We are seeing some movement now, thankfully. The UK has taken steps. Some U.S. states are starting to. But it's slow going.
And the comparisons the source makes are pretty pointed, saying some tech companies operate like big tobacco or the vaping industry. Designing addictive products, finding ways around marketing rules for kids, or even like the oil companies fighting against banning lead in gasoline, even when the evidence showed it caused brain damage in children.
Yeah, those parallels are drawn very clearly. Now, there is a key difference, and it's important. Social media is actually useful for adults. Tobacco isn't, right? But that difference, it doesn't really hold up when we talk about minors. And here's why it's so critical. The reward-seeking parts of a kid's brain, they mature relatively early. But the frontal cortex, the bit responsible for self-control, resisting impulses that doesn't fully develop until the mid-20s. So preteens, they're in this really vulnerable spot, often insecure, easily influenced by peers, looking for that social validation.
Right. We don't let them buy cigarettes or alcohol. We don't let them into casinos.
Exactly. So why give them unrestricted access to social media? The potential costs are so high, and the benefits for them at that age are minimal. The argument really boils down to let kids grow up on Earth first. Let them develop those foundations before we metaphorically send them off to Mars.
Which leads us right into Gen Z, born after 1995, often called the anxious generation. And there's this powerful claim in the material that this generation, this shift, won't really end until the basic conditions of childhood change again.
It's a really interesting perspective that generations aren't just shaped by big events, but maybe even more profoundly by the technologies they grew up with. And if you look around 2009, that's when the oldest Gen Z kids were hitting puberty. And you had this convergence. Widespread broadband internet was common. The iPhone had launched in 2007, putting the internet in pockets. And then you got what's called hyper-viralized social media. That really took off in 2009 with the like button, the retweet button, features that dramatically ramped up the constant comparison and sometimes the toxicity.
That 2009 convergence seems key, but what was maybe the most insidious effect of putting all that tech together right then, beyond just more toxicity?
Well, it completely changed their social reality. A couple years later, 2010, phones get front-facing cameras. Then Facebook buys Instagram in 2012, makes it explode in popularity. Suddenly, it's all about posting images, curated photos, videos, being judged constantly by peers, even strangers.
Yeah.
Gen Z literally became the first generation to go through puberty with this portal in their pockets.
A portal to another universe.
Exactly, an alternative universe. And yeah, it was exciting, addictive, but also really unstable and just fundamentally unsuitable for developing minds. It meant they constantly had to manage this online brand just to fit in, to avoid being shamed online, which is like the ultimate teenage fear.
And the cost.
The cost was time. Less time spent doing essential human things, embodied stuff, physical play, just talking face-to-face, making eye contact, even touch. All things that are absolutely crucial for healthy development. And this is what the source calls the great rewiring of childhood. It's as if they really were the first generation raised on Mars.
So we have this massive digital rewiring. But how does that connect with, well, another big shift that was happening around the same time? This idea of a second, well-intentioned but ultimately disastrous shift. This trend of overprotecting kids in the real world. We definitely saw free play decline from the 80s onwards. Oh, massively. You're spot on. Free play, it's not just fun, it's critical for all mammals, actually. It's how we learn to handle challenges, build resilience. It's like an inoculation. But parents' fears grew. Understandable fears about kidnappers, predators, traffic. So unsupervised outdoor play just plummeted. And this happened right as personal computers and then smartphones were rising.
So less freedom outside.
More time inside.
Yeah.
It paved the way for the shift. From what was mostly a play-based childhood to, by the mid-2010s, a predominantly phone-based childhood for many teenagers.
Yeah.
And to really grasp the difference, it helps to look at the features of real world versus virtual interactions. Real world, it's embodied. We use our bodies. We read body language. It's synchronous, happens in real time with all those subtle back and forth cues.
It's usually one-to-one or one-to-few focused interactions. And it happens in communities, families, schools, teams, where there's usually a higher bar for joining or leaving. You have to invest in relationships. Now, the virtual world, often disembodied, heavily asynchronous. You post, they respond later. Lots of one-to-many broadcasting, like performing for an audience. And crucially, a very low bar for entry and exit. Relationships can feel disposable. You can just block someone, leave a group instantly. That ease of exit, it makes it harder for kids to learn commitment, how to work through disagreements, stick with relationships when things get tough, those vital social skills.
And putting those two pieces together, the overprotection in the real world, underprotection in the virtual, that's the core argument, isn't it? That this is why kids born after 1995 became the anxious generation.
That's the central claim, yes. And the research points to 4 foundational harms from this phone-based childhood. Sleep deprivation, phones in the bedroom, blue light, constant alerts, social deprivation, less face-to-face time, attention fragmentation, the constant switching, the inability to focus deeply, and of course, addiction. And for girls, the link between social media and mental illness, particularly anxiety and depression, is increasingly seen as causal, not just correlation.
Wowzle.
For boys, the effects might look different, but it seems to contribute significantly to this phenomenon called failure to launch. Difficulty transitioning into adult responsibilities, work, relationships.
So it's hitting everyone just maybe in different ways.
Yeah.
And it really forces us to think about our collective responsibility here.
It does. And if you look back at the 20th century, we figured out how to make the real world safer for kids, even when it wasn't convenient for adults. Think about car seats, mandatory seatbelts, banning cigarette vending machines.
Yeah.
We made those changes because protecting kids was deemed more important than adult convenience.
Which brings up a pretty uncomfortable question for today, doesn't it? Are we okay with this trade-off? A virtual world that maybe serves adult needs or whims, but leaves kids vulnerable, especially now that the evidence of harm is becoming so much clearer. History suggests we should protect kids, even if it means some inconvenience for us adults. So what can be done? The material we looked at proposes 4 foundational reforms. And what's striking is how straightforward they seem.
They really are quite simple conceptually, and the confidence level in their potential effectiveness is high. Number 1, no smartphones before high school, so around age 14. Basic phones for calling and texting, yes, but delay that constant internet access.
Okay.
Number 2, no social media before 16. Let their brains get through that peak vulnerability of early adolescence before facing the pressures of social comparison and algorithms designed to hook them.
Makes sense.
Number 3, phone-free schools. All personal devices, smartphones, smartwatches, whatever, stored away during the school day. From first bell to last, let kids focus on learning and on each other.
And the last one.
Number 4, far more unsupervised play and childhood independence. More opportunities for kids to navigate the real world, solve their own problems, develop social skills naturally, overcome anxieties, and essentially learn self-governance.
And the argument is that these aren't actually that hard to do if lots of parents and schools do them together.
Yeah.
And they don't really cost much money.
Exactly. Collective action is key, and there's real urgency here, especially with AI getting so much more sophisticated and things like spatial computing, Apple's Vision Pro goggles making the virtual world even more immersive, potentially more addictive. We need to act now, really.
It's also kind of fascinating how ancient wisdom suddenly feels very relevant here. You look back at someone like Epictetus, the Stoic philosopher, nearly 2,000 years ago. He was basically asking, why do we let nasty comments from others mess with our heads? Why let external stuff control our emotions?
Right.
And Marcus Aurelius, another Stoic, saying, don't waste time worrying about what other people are doing or saying. Focus on your own mind, your own actions.
And look, it's not just kids. While older generations like Gen X haven't seen the same spike in clinical anxiety or depression, how many adults feel frazzled, scattered, exhausted by the constant pings and interruptions from our own devices? This isn't just about protecting kids, it's also about reclaiming our own attention and mental space. That wisdom applies to us too.
So this great rewiring, it's not just about childhood. It's affecting human relationships, our consciousness across the board, making it harder for all of us, kids, teens, adults, to think deeply, to focus, to really care for each other, build strong bonds.
Absolutely. The ultimate message from the source material is powerful. It's about, quote, reclaiming human life for human beings in all generations.
So maybe the final thought for you listening right now is this. In this world where, maybe without us noticing, virtual independence has kind of replaced real-world freedom, what's one small thing, one immediate change you could make in your own life or maybe in your family's life to start reclaiming just a piece of that essential human life?